Hi everybody, welcome to day 4 of week 2 of our unit Growing Stronger. Throughout this week we have been reading the short story Sweet Difficult Sounds, and we're going to continue that story today. Before we begin, let's review the flow for today's session. So first you're going to have an opening and do now activity with a see, think, and wonder exercise. Then we will have a before reading activity that we will do together that will give us a little bit of a preview into today's section of the text. Then you'll go into the full text with some discussion questions. Then you'll do an after the reading activity. And finally, you'll have a closing and connecting activity. And teachers, today is a day where your closing and connecting activity can be of your choice, whichever of these options is going to work best for you and for your students. And as always, teachers, remember you have below here your note for teachers with additional tips and suggestions for how to implement the lesson today. And it's also going to include here on the first slide a link to the teacher's guide. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, we are on day 4 of week 2 of our unit Growing Stronger. The text we're using today is still Sweet Difficult Sounds. Our essential question is the same as it's been throughout the week. How can our emotions impact our progress? Emotions being how we feel, impact meaning have an effect, and progress meaning how we're changing and how we're growing. So how can our emotions and how we feel impact or affect our progress? At this point, can somebody please read below our lesson objectives here in the pink box? And teachers, you can pause this video and give students some time to read those lesson objectives out loud. Okay, thank you for reading our lesson objectives out loud. We have 2 for today. The first is to make logical inferences from the close reading of a text. So after we read Sweet Difficult Sounds, we're going to think about what does the story mean to us, what do we understand about what's going on. Our second lesson objective is to summarize key ideas and details in a text. So again, after we read all of the next part of Sweet Difficult Sounds, we're going to think about the events, the information, and focus on the most important ideas within that information. So at this point, we'll move forward to the opening and do now. Teachers, you can facilitate this exercise with the students. Students, you will be looking at this image here and asking yourselves, what do you see? What do you think, and what do you wonder? And as usual for teachers and students, so you know, in this green box, there are some sentence starters to get started with your responses to these questions. So teachers, at this point, you can pause this video and conduct the opening and do now. And when you return, we will be facilitating the before reading activity. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed doing your opening and do now activity. We are going to start doing the before reading activity together at this point. So this will be discussion based, so we will do some of the work together and then you'll have a chance to discuss in partnerships, small groups, whole group. Teachers, it's up to you, whichever is going to work best for you and for your students. So let's go through the steps for the before reading activity. So first, I'm going to read this part. This will give us some guidance about what we're going to do today. In the story that we have been reading this week, the main character, Nothakula, has to read a poem out loud to her classmates. Our story continues today as she is about to face that difficult situation again. So we understand that we're coming back to these moments where Nothakula is reading her poem in front of the class. The next step is to read this part of the text. This is a little bit of a preview for the text for today. So I'll read this section out loud and you can read along as I read. Nothakula's palms were sweaty. She wiped her hands on her jeans and slumped deeper into her chair. The whole room fell silent as Nothakula got up and shuffled slowly up to the chalkboard. She felt her heart thumping out of her chest and did her best to ignore it. She just had to get this dreadful assignment over with. So I'll read it one more time so you get a second opportunity to listen. Teachers, if you feel like one time was enough, you can skip this part to the next section. Nothakula's palms were sweaty. She wiped her hands on her jeans and slumped deeper into her chair. The whole room fell silent as Nothakula got up and shuffled slowly up to the chalkboard. She felt her heart thumping out of her chest and did her best to ignore it. She just had to get this dreadful assignment over with. So now that we've had a chance to read through this small section of the text, we're going to actually discuss what we just read. So we have 2 discussion questions. Let's go through them one by one. The first discussion question is here. What words and phrases does the author use to show you that Nothokula is anxious? And if we're not sure about this word anxious, another way to say anxious is nervous or uncomfortable. So what words and phrases does the author use to show you that Nothokula is anxious, nervous, uncomfortable? So to answer this, I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to go back into the text and reread this section. So I'm going to start from the beginning. Nothokula's palms were sweaty. And I'm going to pause right there because already I see some evidence, some words and phrases showing me that she's feeling anxious, nervous, uncomfortable. The idea of her palms getting very sweaty and wet. So usually this is a sign that someone is feeling very nervous if their palms get sweaty. So what I'm actually going to do is, since I've identified that these words and phrases show me her feelings of being nervous and anxious, I'm going to highlight here in the text, just so I know if I need to come back to it. So here you guys have an example of some words and phrases showing that she's anxious answering this first discussion question. And at this point, teachers, we can pause the video and students, you'll have an opportunity to look through the rest of the text and find more words and phrases showing that Nothokula is feeling really nervous in this moment. Okay, welcome back. I hope you were able to find some words and phrases to respond to the first discussion question. And we are going to now speak about the second discussion question. That question asks us, how is Nothokula going to react to this situation? Will she be able to overcome her anxiety? So here we're making a bit of a prediction. We're thinking about Nothokula and what we already know about her. We're going to use our ideas to predict what she will do in the situation. Again, we're thinking about how she will react to the situation and will she be able to overcome her anxiety. And if we're not sure, the word overcome, another way to say that is beat or to win against, to overcome. So I'll show you at this point an example of how you could respond to this question. Teachers, again, for this, I'm using the tool, the document that we've had that's been gathering all of our before and after reading activities. So here I adapted the before reading in this document. And at this section, the students can record the words and phrases from the first discussion question. So just remembering back to what I highlighted, palms were sweaty, but focusing really on the second discussion question. So I'll show you an example of how we can respond to discussion question number 2. I think that Nothokula will stay calm and recite the poem successfully. So that's the prediction that I'm going to make about what's going to happen in this part of the story. And here I'm using our document to record my thoughts and write them out completely. So at this point, teachers, we can give students some time to respond to our second discussion question here. They could do it in the chat, or if you created a document similar to the one I've been using, they could record those there as well. After they finish recording their thoughts, they can then share with each other the responses for both question 1 and question 2. So let's pause this video. When we come back, we will wrap up the before reading activity. Welcome back. I hope you are able to share your responses to the discussion questions about this part of the story. So the next part will be going into the text. Before we do that, let's set the purpose for your reading today. The purpose is here in our orange box. Today we will conclude our reading of the story Sweet Difficult Sounds, focusing on the resolution of Nothokula's difficult situation. So we're going to think about the resolution, which is the end or the solution for Nothokula and her challenging situation. Teachers, note that a focus word for today's lesson and the after the reading activity will be this word resolution, so you might want to return to that with students to provide a more full definition. You also have here your academic vocabulary. Please don't forget you can link to this for the words invisible and practice. So at this moment, you can go into the text. Remember that you'll have a recording as well as the actual document. And please don't forget your discussion questions here. Then you can do the after the reading activity and your closing and connecting. And we'll see you back for day 5.